My name is Glynis E. Devine. I'm Chief Juicer because I help women just like you and I squeeze the best out of life. Today I have one of Canada's thought leaders to showcase on our show today. She's a thought leader in leadership for women in Canada and as well from the tech industry. So I'm really excited to have her here. Her guest is Andrea Nicholls. She's the VP Finance at Triton Digital here in Montreal. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you very much, Glynis. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. For our listeners who are turning into today for the very first time, She-Suite is a new Canadian initiative that has the hopes of reflecting Canada's top thought leaders with one primary focus, and that is putting more women into senior leadership positions in Canada today. So my mission is to interview 150 of Canada's top women leaders from various industries, and the goal of the interviews is to come up with a toolbox, if you will, tips and tools and strategies that address three primary areas. And those three areas are as follows. The first one is we have a lot of people that are tuning in that are high potentials. They're aspiring to leadership, but haven't gotten there yet. And so the goal is to come up with tips and tools that they can apply, a healthy mindset, good communication skills to have some of those difficult conversations, the ability to think themselves into the role before they actually are. So it's very much about intrinsic mindset. The second area that the TELUS hopes to address is arming women who are in those positions. Whether you're a woman or a man, you have a mandate of three things: increase your performance, improve retention, and increase revenue. And so we're going to talk specifically on this telesummit about how we do that specific to a woman. And the third area of the tools and tips is coming up with strategies how corporations can build cultures where She-Suite can thrive. So a place that will attract, keep, nourish, and grow women leaders so that they can be healthy and have a sustainable business plan. So let's jump in right there, shall we, Andrea?
Perfect.
Let's start with the first piece of the pie, which is the intrinsic piece. We do have a lot of people who tune into the podcast who are aspiring for leadership. So they're either brand new supervisors and haven't really thought of managing a team yet, or they're at mid-management and have their eye on a senior leadership role. What did you have to do as a new aspiring leader to prepare specifically as a woman for this particular role?
I think for me, the preparation really began way long ago when I started my career. I think the key for me, really, I spent 13 years at PwC at a public services firm. I'm a shy person to start off with. I'm not very super comfortable, at least when I started off. I think that experience for me at PwC really allowed me to shine, really allowed me to work with clients, make myself heard, make myself communicate better. And I think that's really key, to find a forum whereby you can really allow yourself to expand and work on these things that you need to work on. Changing again on really specifically moving to the senior management piece of it, I think it's really a case of finding yourself, being comfortable communicating, and finding a forum really to practice, whether or not you have the chance to, speak at your company, whether or not you join Toastmasters and try to work on that. I think the key thing moving in is really to learn how to communicate, because you're pretty comfortable when you move into senior management. People understand that you've mastered your subject matter. That's a given. You've understood that. And
proven yourself.
No, you've proven it. What you need to do is be able, because it becomes all about influence, being able to speak to people at different levels, being able to get your ideas across, and being able to influence them. And that comes through two things: the communication, and also being grounded and being confident in what you have to say. Also, a key for me is really the ongoing relationship building. I don't think we can focus enough at making sure that we have both the sponsors, the mentors, meeting with your peers, just being able to forge relationships with your clients as well, with your customers, your suppliers, spending that time to to really solidify relationships, which takes time, which takes sometimes the informal communication or the informal talk at the coffee machine, which sometimes means going to lunch, bringing yourself out of that shell and just listening.
I was just going to say, for a shy person, that takes a ton of energy too, right?
It does. And I think the more you do it, the more comfortable you become. So if I would give really young managers that key or that advice, it would be really work on your relationship building skills and your communication. Another piece I think that you could not at all diminish is the ability to learn. I think that once you've gotten to that level, people think that it's over. It's over. I know everything. It's over. No, I think that you have to focus yourself on learning, whether or not it be listening to a podcast like today's podcast, whether or not
great plug, thank you.
Exactly, great plug. Whether or not it be reading self-help books, a lot of stuff is available on the internet, lots of podcasts. Really continuing to learn and understanding that it's just beginning. You're at a different level. You're also understanding how the interactions and the communication works and the team building works. So you really have to keep your mind open to learn and just realize that you're at the beginning again. And I think that's really important for new, let's say, vice presidents, new people to the C-suite, really to understand that it's a learning.
It's an ongoing thing.
You're going to have. I think the key thing is to make sure that you've got contacts, mentors, friends. I reach out a lot to my friends that are in similar situations, and we talk about ideas, we bash things out. I learn from other people's experiences. Just be open to learn. And I think that's the most, you can learn from anywhere and any situation.
I attended a women's leadership conference in Orange County a number of years ago when Robert Schuller was alive, and I remember him coining the phrase, the peak-to-peak principle, the fact that when we get up to the top of a peak, we see a whole new mountain range. And that's exactly what I thought of when you mentioned that, because that's true, right? We don't ever arrive in life, do we?
No.
We get to a place and we see a whole bunch of new opportunities, right?
Definitely. And I mean, it's learning the politics as well that happen at that level. Again, you may be sheltered from that level until you reach it, and learning how to maneuver and deal with it. It's a daily learning process. And of course, there are the specific items that we have to face as women, how we're viewed in the boardroom. Sometimes we're not listened to. Sometimes we need to learn how to communicate and get our point across. And it takes, being grounded in yourself, being confident in yourself, and just really practicing, the first meeting you go to at the C-suite, you may just sit and listen and understand and absorb a little bit before you add something. Don't be afraid to spend some time listening and then find your voice. But know that you are there just remember you are there for a reason. You were not chosen to be in that suite because you're not worthy. You're worthy, and you have the knowledge. You just need to learn to operate in this new environment.
Excellent advice. And one of the key words that popped out when you were speaking, Andrea, was the word influence. I think for new aspiring leaders, even if your role or your title on your business card doesn't say leader, manager, supervisor, or that your organization doesn't necessarily reflect that yet, influence is key today in business, right? The ability to influence thought leaders and decision makers is huge, and we can do that as much by listening and speaking when it's appropriate, and having the courage to speak up when it's our time, right?
Definitely. I think we can't underestimate the amount of influence we have, maybe through your actions as well. Sometimes you don't even speak. Sometimes it's about what you do, and people definitely look to you. Your teams look to you as really a model of the behavior of the company.
Sure, they'll follow whatever we show them. You brought up a really valuable piece, and that is that learning piece. And that's one of the 4 quadrants that I use a tool that Stephen Covey taught one time. I have a compass, and it goes in I use an old school planner. I still use paper. I have a digital backup, but Truth is that my battery doesn't fail on my paper agenda, so I still use it.
That's right.
And I have a compass that every Sunday night I sit down, and the top of my planner has, what am I going to do to nourish myself spiritually, mentally, physically, and socially? And you mentioned a couple of those, right? You mentioned the fact that we need to stay sharp. And Covey calls it sharpening your saw. So I'm curious, apart from feeding yourself on podcasts, thank you for that plug, what other healthy habits have you adopted either daily or weekly or on an ongoing basis in any of those areas that have helped you be your best as a senior woman leader?
I think for me, there are a couple of things, definitely from the physical point of view. Glennis, you and I have talked. I'm a big lover of Zumba. Exactly. I love to get that energy out and just sweat it out on the floor. Kickboxing as well. I think physical energy for me really rejuvenates me, even if I'm having a horrible, crappy day and I go in and I hear that music. That's for me, that's really where I thrive and I love it. I think that also family time for me is key. Just that 20 minutes to sit down and have dinner with my husband and my daughter and really talk about their days, understand what's happening in their days and try to focus on someone else other than myself. That's a rejuvenation. And for me, it's having a really strong social connection. One of the people who's on this call right now, Tanya Clark, is a very close friend of mine. We've got a really close circle of women who we get together on a very regular basis, and we probably text each other constantly during the day. I think we've got a text that goes on all day to be able to socialize with our families and our children, and this is really something that really is important to me, to be able to have that support outside the workplace and really be able to reach out and let loose. I think it's really important for people to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think they're two sources, right? It's an outlet for stress, and it's also a source for filling up, for energizing.
Sure, you've got to energize yourself. You got to fill that energy back because, the workplace it's not easy some days. It's not easy, and it takes a lot out of you, and it also allows you to remember who you are and why you're there. And being surrounded with people that you're comfortable with just does it for me.
Yeah, and I almost need a constant reminder of that. One of my closest and dearest friends is on the call today. Hi, Martin. And I so appreciate her input and just feeling connected. And the sad part is, in a busy week, I don't get the chance to always do those social things, and they're the first things that sometimes go off the agenda, right? That's the time that I say, you know what? I can't swing lunch this week. And yet it's critical to feed that social part of us, because we can only do that for so long. And then it starts to atrophy, just like any other muscle, right? So thank you to all our peeps who are on the show today, who are being supportive and help us stay sane. I was talking to somebody just the other day, Andrea, and I said, if you think about it, we spend 10 hours a day with people that we don't necessarily choose to put in our life, right? And we your life is like mine, 17-year-old daughter. We get this tiny little slice of time with them at the end of the day. And I'm sure you've suffered from the same thing I have. Some days when I've had somebody rip a strip off me, Sierra walks in after school and I think, back away from the mama, just give me 5 minutes apiece. And that's not how we want to be spending a day at home, right? Yeah. That's right. I know that you connect on a couple of different levels with some people on the call. And on top of that, you share a coup de cœur, as we say in Montreal. You have a pet charity that you not only support, but you have blazed a trail for your company. So kudos to you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Games of Hope? Sure.
Games of Hope I've been involved in since way back when I was at PwC. The actual founder of Games of Hope for Hope, Nick Kritikos, is somebody that worked as part of my team way back. And It started off as just a small sports tournament. He used to hold it at Vanier College. It started off small, like back in 2001, and grew and grew and grew over the years. Why I love Games for Hope so much is it's really twofold. First, definitely it's the charity aspect. It's helping children, especially sick children, raise funds for hospitals. This year we've got 3 charities that we're involved in. One of the charities is Giant Steps, which is a school for autistic kids, which is really near and dear to my heart because I've got 2 nephews-in-law who are autistic. So it's always every year donating money to charities, different charities, which you can actually choose which one you want to donate to. So that philanthropic point of it is fantastic. What's a really good opportunity from a corporate point of view, it's basically a corporate sports tournament. So it encourages companies to come together and play as teams at the corporate tournament. So it encourages a lot of team building within the company, because right now at our company, we were lucky enough, I was lucky enough to get involved last year and convince the company to get involved. We've got 2 teams for the first time, which is great. We've got a basketball team and a volleyball team.
And you put your money where your mouth is because you are playing basketball.
I am playing
on June the
basketball,
17th. Am I right?
Which will be a challenge given I'm 5'2", and I haven't played since high school. So
cool.
I don't know how much playing I'm really
kudos to you. There you go. That's the way to show them how it's done. Good girl.
Exactly. But what's really nice is that in order to raise the funds, we have to hold bake sales, do some fundraising activities at the company, which allows us to gel more from a corporate point of view or a corporate team building. So it's a nice balance. We're doing something good. We're all getting involved as a company, and we're doing some team building within the company as well. It's truly a win-win. And
absolutely,
it's a wonderful day. It's going to be on June the 17th this year. I love it because you go in there and there's so many different companies that are participating. You're bound to see people that you've worked with before at different companies. It's such a great social day. And really you see people's competitive side as well, because some people are uber competitive. So it's nice to see people in a different side.
Light, absolutely.
Families, so it's a beautiful family day as well. There are lots of things for the kids to do. So it's really a wonderful thing to be able to be involved in, and I'm very proud to be the one who brought it to Triton.
Yeah, no kidding. That's awesome. And to be, what I was saying to Andrea before the call, listeners, is also that it's great to get these things set up, but to actually participate is huge as well. So kudos to you for blazing the trail and for being involved, leading by example. I really like the fact that we know from studies. I worked with a company called Clear Picture many years ago, and Clear Picture was responsible for employee engagement. And so we used to do these employee engagement surveys. And what we noticed as a correlation is companies that have any kind of extracurricular type of outreach also had higher retention. So we're going to talk a little later in the show about improving retention. That's a huge piece, is that social piece, right? That team building piece. So kudos to you. That's awesome. If you are juggling all that we do as a mom and you have a busy parent life, you are part of that sandwich community. You have a mom who you mentioned is in care and a dad who's living on his own, and you offer primary care to the 2 of them, right?
Yes, I think I'm definitely a statistic of the sandwich industry. It's really interesting as my daughter grows up and gets more and more independent. I find my parents have taken that role on right and to the max, right? So yeah. It's really something that takes a lot of time, and I have had to make some life decisions or career decisions in spite of that.
Yeah. You made one really courageous one in my opinion, and that was that you took almost a year off at one point in your career.
Yes, I took in 2011. I took roughly 10 months off. It was a great timing for me. My mom had recently been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, so she wasn't at that bad of a stage yet. So I said to myself, this is the time I get to spend time with her while she still remembers who I am, and we can still have some quality time.
What a
So
gift.
that was one of the reasons. Second reason, my daughter was moving over from elementary to high school, and I had always had the hard driving career, lots of late hours, travel, lots of time, etc. I said, this is the time I really want to spend some time with her. And I was lucky I was able to do it. Lucky for me, and financially I was able to take that time off. It was a wonderful 10 months off. It allowed me to reconnect a lot with my family, spend a lot of time with my daughter, actually drop her to school and pick her up, something I never had done before. And
that is truly a gift.
It was a great it was great for me. It was a great recharge for me in my career. Obviously, there were some risks associated, because when I went back into finance, I went back as a consultant for 6 months, not really knowing how things would roll out. But again, it was a great decision. It turned out to be positive for me. After time I've been here at Triton for going on 6 years, moving into several consulting roles and ending up as VP Finance. So for me, that
obviously it paid off.
It paid off for me. It's really at Triton, I'm doing something very, very different. It's in the tech industry. It's in an industry that's a lot smaller. The company is a lot smaller than the companies that I was used to working in. But I've enjoyed it immensely, because it's given me a breadth of knowledge and exposure in areas I wasn't exposed to before, and I've really enjoyed it. So sometimes a decision that you make, you never know what can transpire. I think you really have to keep your mind open and really be open to any opportunities. And you never know if you
be open and courageous, right? Because I think it took a ton of courage to make that move. I love watching long jump. I think long jump is fascinating, probably because I got short legs and I can't jump far. But one of the things I notice is they have to back up to be able to do record jumps. And I think that's critical. And I think a lot of women are afraid to do that. We've been ingrained with the mindset, just keep swimming, just keep swimming,
right.
Just keep swimming. And truth is, that's true sometimes. And sometimes we need to just stop, press pause, take a step back, recharge our batteries, reconnect with whatever area of our life. In your case, it was family and those very crucial relationships. And you're right, it does energize us going back in. So that's refreshing to hear from you. Thank you.
And I think something you mentioned as well, in that area, we have to understand or remember that a career is a long period of time. I think because of the way we're focused, as you said, just keep swimming and just keep climbing, sometimes we don't realize that's a long time. So if you make a switch or a couple, it's a 6 month or a year switch, in the scheme of things, will it really make a difference? And if you can, I look back at 5 years later as my mother is, more and more ill, and I think that's one of the best decisions I've made. But as you said, there's always risk involved, because you never know. It could be a down market. Maybe you don't find something. But I think at the end of the day, it's all about being grounded and knowing yourself and making your decisions really for what's beneficial for you.
Excellent advice. Which brings me to my next question. Sometimes it is a family reconnect that we do. Sometimes it's investing in our health. Sometimes it's investing in our further education. And sometimes it's a lot of those balls in the air all at the same time. So my next question for you is there a price for doing it all? When we've got all these roles, we got a lot of balls in the air. What price have you had to sacrifice in order to have some of the success that you did?
I definitely think that there is a price to pay. I really think the sacrifices in terms of time. When you work in these type of careers, it's all about the overtime hours. It's all about the weekend hours. It's all about, giving a commitment to the company or whatever role you have.
Right.
That's the sacrifice that you take or you have. On the other hand, that sacrifice affords you opportunities that, it's easy. And maybe for me, I can look around to many people I know and I can see the both sides. Maybe you're a 9-to-5 or stay-at-home mom, but there's no perfection on any side, and you have to know within yourself.
Yeah.
I know in myself, and I've talked to my friends many times. I was guilty at the beginning, going back to work, and should I be a stay-at-home mom? But then, I am not a stay-at-home mom. I'm not. And at the end of the day, you just have to do what's best for you, where you're happiest, and realize that that's a sacrifice you make. But the sacrifice, on the other hand, the benefit is that I have a career right now. I can become independent. I can be independent. I can show my daughter that I'm independent as a woman, and a woman of color on top of it, who's able to do certain things and have certain areas exposed to her that wouldn't necessarily be the case otherwise. So that, for me, that's really, really important. And also I can, have my daughter be exposed to many of my closest friends who are in similar positions and have daughters. And it's wonderful to be able to see that network of people that have been successful in that way. So is there a price to pay? I think I would tell any up and coming person, yes, but just make sure the outcome is worth the sacrifice. And if in any case you feel that it's not, then you have to rethink. Also, think that things are temporary. A lot of the time you'll have a blip where, you'll have a crazy work schedule, but it's not going to last forever. And just, you're looking with your eyes on the prize. Where is this going to lead you? And if you feel that it's still worth it, then go for it. I also think that being as women, I think we put also a lot of pressure on ourselves. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be perfect. For instance,
super mom. Do
you really have to go to every single parent-teacher night? Will the child have a heart attack if the father goes to the parent-teacher night one time without you? I think we put this much of pressure on ourselves to attend every recital, to attend every parent-teacher night, to attend every soccer game. And at the end of the day, we can share some of those responsibilities with our partners as well. There are always mediums that we could, roads we can take to make our life a lot more easy without putting that undue pressure on ourselves. So I think that's something that we have to watch as women as well, what pressure we put, because I'm certain that in a lot of the cases, the husband doesn't feel pressure if he has to go on a business trip and miss a recital. That's because his role is in his mind. I need to go on this business trip because that's part of my career, and I need to provide for my family and reach a certain goal. There's no problem with that. So I think we as women, we have to start thinking that way as well in some cases.
I think you're right. I think we're our own worst enemies sometimes, and that we put these unreachable bars up for us. So that's a good segue into my second piece of the pie of the telesummit. All leaders, men and women, are dictated, in very senior roles, are dictated mandates. They do have a bar set for them. They're different from the bar we set for ourselves. And typically those are three universal things. Whether you're a man or a woman, as a senior leader, you're expected to improve performance, increase revenue, and improve overall retention. Keep your top talent because it's expensive to rehire. And today we have a very changing landscape, right? We have not only just silos, we have an increase of silos, we have job sharing, we have remote employees, we have global expansion, we're all over the place. So my question is, how do we achieve those three mandates, those three bars that are set for us differently as women than our male colleagues do?
In terms of the employee retention, I guess I'll back it all up to the goals to increase performance, retention. It's all about building strong teams. And regardless of all of the things that we need to do as companies, as you know, profitability, we're in finance where it's all about profitability. At the end of the day, it all comes down to the team that you build. I think we as women, we have a unique, basically a unique talent. Our emotional intelligence as women allows us to relate so much better than men to people. I maybe that's a controversial statement, but I really
you heard it here,
so.
folks, first. Yes.
I really feel so. I think being able to connect with our teams, I think it's being able to give feedback. I think it's being able to find the right candidates. I think it's being able to retain the right candidates. It all comes down to emotional intelligence, being able to listen to people, being able to understand what concerns them, to be able to find the time and spend the time with people. Part of, I'm sure all of the women on this call, a lot of your day is managing people. I would think the majority of your day is managing people, and being able to do so and really connect with them is key. So I really think we have the upper hand in that
Nice.
situation as women. I really, really do. And I think it's come back and it's been demonstrated many times throughout my career in terms of forging relationships and getting back to what we talked about before. Relationship building is key, whether or not be your team, your staff. And I think we have the ability to do so very, very easily and innately. So
relationships have been given far more importance even in the last year than they ever have before. Certainly from a marketing standpoint, everything is relationship marketing now, right? It's how we
That's
make
right.
the customer or the end user feel about what they're doing. And I think that comes out of huge breakthroughs in the understanding around emotional intelligence. And some of the things that you mentioned, and we'll talk about them with my next question, some of those things are inherently feminine. So not to draw any broad brushstrokes, every human being is a blend of feminine and masculine. I tend to communicate far more in my masculine than in my feminine in business, far more in my feminine at home. So we have those to tap into. I think the difference is in the past, we as women, we weren't necessarily taught that was as powerful as it is. And I think it is very powerful. So you mentioned a lot of things, all that came under the umbrella of emotional intelligence. And I agree. Leadership styles for women leaders has morphed a lot, right? The powerful women we saw a decade or 2 decades ago used a very different leadership style. They were successful because they led like men. And
Definitely.
Fortunately, we're seeing that change, right? So apart from emotional intelligence, or as part of emotional intelligence, what inherently feminine strengths do you think women should tap into? You mentioned relationship building and certainly communicating. Anything else you can think of?
I think that there are, I think that there's not necessarily something inherently feminine. I think that it's a question of hearing your voice or being confident and grounded in your voice. I think that that's a difference that I've seen over my career. When I think back at my times at PwC, and we had the first couple of female partners make it at PwC, you know, they were dressing like men. They were trying to emulate how men did business. And I think that there's really been a difference. I think women have been more and more comfortable in feeling or expressing themselves, hearing their own voice in the boardroom, having more examples out there as to women who are in powerful positions. I think it's given women the boost in the confidence. So from that point of view, I don't think that there is anything inherently feminine. Apart, the emotional intelligence for me is very key. But other than that, it's just the fact that women now are more confident in expressing themselves and hearing their voice and knowing that when they express themselves, they will be heard, and demanding that they will be heard at all levels of the company. That's really a change, and I can really see that change compared to when I started working. More women in senior management, Also, not only in the back office positions, really being a good representative of around the board table.
Well, and I think you bring up a very valid point. You must see it in your daughter, and I certainly see it in mine. The fact that they're far more assertive than I think we ever were way back when, because quite frankly, it took me till much later in life to hear my voice, to honor my voice. There's the difference. I always had a good gut. I didn't necessarily always listen and act on it. And I work with a co-leader, Lee Brovdani. She's a trust expert, and the two of us run a transformational retreat down in Punta Cana. It's called Your Soul Journey, because you can always find yourself so much easier when you're near the beach with margarita, And one of the conversations we got into was the fact that there comes a point in your life where you stop tuning that voice out and start listening to her. And realizing, yeah, she does know what the answers are for, in my case, for your soul, right? For what your journey is in this life. So I think that's excellent, wise advice. And that is tuning in, hearing it, and honoring it by speaking up. So let's talk about corporations, because we've talked about how to arm C-suite to be ready. What can corporations do? And the reason I ask this is, I chaired an event, Women in Leadership Forum up in Toronto last year, and Catalyst was there, and they shared many of the studies that had been done. One in particular was about how men and women saw the C-suite differently. And so of the participants polled, 92% of women respondents said that there was a need for more women at the top, while 28% of men said there was a need for women at the top, which means that the other 72% felt there wasn't. So I guess my question is, why do you think so few men want women in the C-suite?
I think a lot of it has to do with, I guess, the crux of human nature. People like to be around people who are similar to themselves. And in my mind, men, it's just a question of exposure. They haven't seen a lot of women in the C-suite. They've seen women in a certain type of role, and haven't seen them really being a part of the C-suite or being a part of those senior meetings or senior roundtables. I think the way that we change that in corporations is that, number one, people have to be cognizant and be able to recognize junior employees, junior women who have the ability, who are the high potentials, and basically be able to mentor them and bring them up. I think the only way it's going to be it's a recurring
Absolutely.
thing.
It's going to have to feed itself.
The more people, other women then see, okay, well, there are a couple of women in there. Great, I'm going to aspire to that. And then it continues to turn over. I think both men and women have to be cognizant to try to recognize the talent in the junior women coming abroad, whether or not it be junior women and nurture them within the company, whether or not it be in hiring to make sure that we are not hiring only people that look exactly like ourselves, to be
comfort zone.
Whether or not that is gender-based, race-based, etc. Really looking generationally based, and really looking towards being diverse. So it really is up to the senior management in the company to start recognizing talent in the women and bringing them up. I think that's the only way we're going to get to the point where it's not only the percentages. I went to a conference a couple of weeks ago with Caroline Kodzi, I think the women of the governance.
Exactly.
And the statistics are horrible in terms of women at the C-suite and Fortune 500. Why is that? Why can a woman be a fantastic performer up until a certain point? It doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense from a business point of view, which is probably when we look from a bottom line business point of view. You've got situations, for instance, the problems that happen in the city of Montreal, where there was, for the 375th anniversary, the advertising that was put out, there were totally nobody of color at all in the advertising. Why did that?
And Montreal's such a diverse city of all the cities in Canada.
It makes you think, at the end of the day, maybe it's because there's nobody at the board table that was able to flag that. Same thing for Pepsi. There was an incident a couple of months ago where some of the advertising was off base. But again, at the end of the day, you've got to put people in the room.
And they have to be tuned into that conversation, right? You bring up a very valid point for our specific slice of that diversity, gender. That means that men and women have to speak up. That means women have to nurture those junior roles. That means that everyone has to see diversity as diversity and not just from their own lens. Wise advice. Thank you, Andrea. I always like to leave people with a wow, and we're tying up now. WOW to me is within 1 week. So it's an acronym. I try to encourage people to pick one thing that they can do, just one, within a week, so it has fast ROI that they can do to make a difference. So let's tie it up for our junior leaders who are aspiring to leadership. Give them one thing they can do within a week, Andrea, that will help them move a little closer to their goal of being a leader.
Reach out, and whether or not it be contacts from a former position, a current position, reach out and ask a question and, observe a person and see what they do to be able to succeed and learn from them. I would just really say ask a question, reach out. People love to be called up and asked a question. Give me some advice on something.
Sure, that's a compliment.
So I would say reach out. Don't be shy.
Beautiful.
Very open to helping other people out and sharing.
Good. What about for top women just like you? What's one tip that you can encourage them to move on and carry on doing the work that they do?
I think being grounded in yourself and really understanding that being grounded in yourself doesn't mean that you're perfect and you can't make a mistake. You can make a mistake, and if you observe people, especially men at the boardroom, a lot of mistakes are made without beating ourselves up about them. So I think the biggest thing is really being grounded, understanding you're learning and you're making mistakes, and just having a commitment to continue learning and improving is the key thing I would say is the most important.
Good. So reach out, let it go, and leave us one last one for companies. What's one step a company could do immediately that would start to create a culture where top women want to be a part of?
Pull out your org chart and look at all the women there and identify some top high potential people and really start mentoring them and putting together a plan to move them up.
Excellent advice.
Use your org chart. There are a lot of people out there that have the potential.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrea. I can't thank you enough. Love the fact that you use the word grounded. It's one of the words I use to describe you. You have just a nice, solid sense of character that I have come to really appreciate. Thank you for sharing your expertise on the call today. My pleasure. Good. So remember, listeners, if you're in the Montreal area, June the 17th at the Hockey Arena in Brossard, you can come out and support any of the Games of Hope. Do get involved, donate, and participate. And if you want to find out how to bring that type of movement to your own office, Andrea has graciously agreed to share any kind of information to how to bring it into your organization. You can email her at andrea.nicholls, Nicholls, at tritondigital.com. So please take her advice and reach out and ask. Join the She Suite group on LinkedIn so that you can get updates of the upcoming telesummits. Tune in to shesuite.ca for a list of all the upcoming recordings. And this brings our show to a close. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. And thank you, Andrea Nicholls, for being a gracious thought leader. She Suite, where top Canadian women are changing the game. Have a great day.